Let's move on now to Austria, from the University of Education. We have a team from Birgit Albaner, Oliver Kastner-Hauler, Karin Tengler. Are you ready?
Yes, we are ready. Can you hear me?
You have the floor.
Wonderful. Hello and welcome to our topic Near and Far, Learning Despite Corona. Let me introduce my colleagues Karin Tengler, Birgit Albaner and myself, Oliver Kastner-Hauler. We are all three professors and lecturers of the Universities of Education. And this is the talk, the speech is about how the universities responded for in-service teachers and the crisis. Let me hand over the microphone to Karin Tengler.
Thank you, Oliver. Now I will start. When schools were closed in Austria due to the COVID-19 crisis, teachers had to change their lessons from one day to the next and switch to distance learning. Although some national e-learning strategies had been implemented in the past years, not all schools and teachers were very familiar with digital media. The great challenge for teachers was to design distance learning with meaningful activities in such a way that the students didn't lose focus on their learning goals, their motivation remained high, and communication was maintained. Within the framework of a research project, the University College of Teacher Education in Lower Austria conducted an online survey. Parents and teachers from primary to secondary schools were investigated about the opportunities and challenges arising from the crisis. 345 teachers and about 400 parents participated in the survey, and it lasted from April the 8th to May the 10th. As you can see here, the most teachers who responded to the survey were from primary and secondary 1 schools. When parents and teachers were asked about their satisfaction with distance learning, the table shows us that teachers perceive the situation more positively than the parents. And here you can see the medium which were used during the distance learning. The most used media were books and sheets, followed by videos and learning platforms, which were mainly used in secondary schools. The next slide shows you the workload of the students. 183 parents reported that their children worked between 2 and 4 hours, slightly less than during regular school attendance. And in contrast, 2/3 of the teachers said that they spent much more time on planning and providing material during the crisis. Then we asked the parents about the obstacles of distance learning. And from the point of view of the parents, the double burden of home office and homeschooling and the lack of motivation were the greatest challenges. Teachers always assume that students don't have technical equipment available, but as the table shows, this isn't the greatest problem for parents. And of course, there were also positive aspects that were mentioned, namely fostering self-directed learning, the flexible time management, the promotion of digital literacy. Kids have no pressure to perform and got an individual support, and the good cooperation between parents and teachers were mentioned. In summary, it can be said that technology, organization, and consideration of didactics are the central aspects of successful distance learning. And we are on the right way of digitization. To support teachers and parents during this time, the University College of Lower Austria developed the platform Learning Despite Corona. On this website, you can find tips on organization and didactics, as well as numerous possibilities of how to use digital media in class. And now my colleague Oliver will show you an actual implementation of blended learning, a blended learning example, which took place totally online.
Thank you, Karin. Please join me and on my journey how the course Programming in the Classroom, which was planned totally in class, totally live, was developed to a complete online blended learning course. So the course is about using a physical computing device such as the BBC Microbit and combine it with block-based visual programming language to foster computational thinking for teachers that are in the first 3 years in service. So to better know about the time frame we have available, I've listed here all the aspects. So just briefly, 15 hours is the whole workload, and it is divided into 18 hours teaching from the teacher and 32 hours self-study from the student, which is already a teacher in her first 3 years. I'd also liked to implement flipped classroom as a paradigm shift because being near and far is a central point for the students so that they know you are there, even if they can't see you. So the seeing is implemented a little bit in my flipped classroom implementation here. So the original layout of the course was just 2 days training. And afterwards, the students had to do a reflection of, let's say, their takeaway and how they could implement that in an own lesson. For that, there were also 3 hours of asynchronous training and support online dedicated. And these hours before, after, I'd like to show you how this actual course was transferred into a completely online version. At first, we had an online welcome session in which the layout of the changed course was already presented and discussed with the students so that they get the right direction and know what they are asked and what we do expect from them. After that welcome session, we had another flipped video assignment. So it were 2 flipped video assignments actually, and this counted for 2 hours. After the first come together online, the students were asked to do a MOOC, a massive open online course. And fortunately, in Austria, at the university in Graz, the technical university, there was a self-study course, so totally self-driven, and they had 3 weeks' time to complete this course. It counted 10 hours for the students, but we included additional 5 hours for the instructor. After the weeks of the MOOC, to catch up with the students and to see them in person, we had 2 remote sessions with teams. And at each of these sessions, they got a homework assigned that they should hand in via Teams. Over the whole period, we had online support, Teams or email or whatever they needed to reach out to us. And the reflection of their own lesson planning was still in the program. And there we used Flipgrid. So to do peer review with the other students so that everyone could take away more than one example of the actual teaching and use it maybe in his own class. So here is the layout of the course in graphical display. At the week 1, we had these 2 hours with the 2 flipped video tasks, then the MOOC from week 2 to 4, and in week 5 and week 6. So there was 1 week in difference so that they had time to complete their tasks, their homework. And at the end, the reflection with 2 hours written reflection and peer review of 2 of their colleagues. So this implementation was really fun for us, and we like to do it in that way. And let's see how we can make it better the next time or improve. And I will hand over to my colleague Birgit. I think she has already ideas how to do that.
Thank you very much, Oliver. Also being a lecturer at the University of Teacher Training, I would now like to introduce a model to show how we can equip teachers and students of all subjects with new tools and didactic methods useful in times of crisis like this, and by using a special training model. This is a model for pre- and in-service trainings and involves all interest groups in the education system, and therefore promises to be particularly effective and sustainable. The participants take on different roles and functions and should be motivated by an adapted benefit system. On the first level, there are, for example, teacher educators and researchers. On the second, there are students or teachers in service. And on the third, as tutors, there are seen students or pupils. The content that is brought into the system by this model can vary. It can be tools or methods. And as an outcome for all the participants, there is a focus on the production of materials. At the next slide, in a pilot phase, we worked with learning flips from the flipped classroom model, as you just Oliver told, which were produced, practiced, evaluated, and reflected on at each level. Next, a new feature of this training approach is that the training involves different stakeholders who play different roles throughout the training process. Participants create their own materials, which is immediately implemented in the practical phase and shared with others in an online material collection. This process is accompanied by feedback, support, and reflection. Continuous assistance and obligatory implementation in the own educational institution should achieve long-term effects, as well as the establishment of a benefit system which should guarantee motivation in a long-term perspective. This could be certificates or credits for the university. On the next slide, we see the setting for the training. Now at this time of crisis, we had to change a little bit. The setting for the training was 2 face-to-face teaching events, which we made in form of video conferences. At the Teacher Educator University, we worked with Zoom, and where the theoretical input was conveyed. Digital tools and methods are input of this setting. And a practical phase with pupils was the next step. The practical phase the students made were in distance learning, mainly with Microsoft Teams. And then another face-to-face lecture with Zoom, with the university, and in which the practical phase was evaluated and reflected, where they got peer feedback and so on. Within the framework of this pilot project, 3 evaluations were carried out with three groups of students of a teacher education program to assess the opportunities and challenges of the training model and the transfer of the new teaching didactics. In the first and second evaluations, focus interviews were conducted to qualitatively assess strengths and weaknesses of the model. And the third was a survey served as a first test of a methodologically formulated competence grid and was used in an online questionnaire at the end of the qualification measure. It presents a very interesting picture of competencies in different dimensions, such as media production, media literacy, information literacy, and so on, and different levels, such as overview knowledge, practical application, and transfer to others. But this still needs to be thoroughly evaluated and adapted. The next slide, we present the outcome, the focus interviews after the final face-to-face session, which served as a forum for reflection and exchange of experiences. These reflections showed a clear picture. The new training model works well if there is added value for mentors and tutors and if it can be well integrated into school life. For further discussion and for the final words, please, Oliver.
Yes, thank you, Birgit. Thank you, Karin, again. We are pleased to hear your feedback and your questions on how the universities of education in Austria responded to in-service teachers for the need of COVID-19 enhanced trainings and knowledge transfer. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver, Birgit, and Karin, for a very interesting presentation, showing us the impressive work that you're doing at the University of Education in Austria. We see once again how important the role of universities is in teacher training and supporting teachers with the use of digital media. So thank you very much. Your work is very impressive.
Thank you.
Do we have maybe time for one question? You can write it on the chat if you have a...
We don't have any questions so far.
Okay, we'll leave it at the end then. I have questions, but we'll leave it at the end. Thank you very much for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.